never thought my own parents would shatter me like this. It was supposed to be a joyful evening, my brother's birthday. I even dressed up, clutching a gift for him. But instead of celebration, I got a champagne bottle to my head. Their cruel betrayal exposed. What they didn't know is that I held the deed to their world. This isn't just a story, it's my reckoning. I kept the receipts. And now you'll hear it all. Stay until the end and tell me where you're watching in the comments. You're not alone. My name is Keziah. The worst aspect, though, was not that. They attempted to sell my house without informing me. They had previously removed me from family photos, and they recorded a video accusing me of betraying them when I resisted. A folded napkin or a deserted house, I never imagined that would be the face of justice. Perhaps such is the result when loyalty is overshadowed by silence. I want to know what time it is where you are before we start. Also, have you ever had to prioritize peace before those who are genetically similar to you? This narrative doesn't turn out the way you expect it to. So, tell me what happens below. There was a beautiful golden twilight that stretched across driveways and flowering oleanders on this sunny Sunday evening in San Antonio. My parents' house was the one I pulled up to right as the valet unlocked the driver's door. Compared to the BMWs and Teslas parked along the cul-de-sac, my spotlessly clean Toyota sedan stood out like a sore thumb. Taking a few steps outside, I brushed the dust from my plain navy dress, sleek silhouettes, understated jewelry, a small pearl stud that I'd owned since college, and no name brand. I strode up to the front porch, where Lazaro's monogrammed pen set was inside a carefully wrapped package, and heard laughter as loud as champagne. The home looked completely different. A kaleidoscope of twinkling lights danced across the yard, while the sound of live jazz filled the air, accompanied by the subtle scent of cedar-planked salmon. On the brink of his 40s, my brother Lazaro, the Reynolds galaxy's eldest and brightest star, was celebrating a birthday. Compared to other weddings I'd attended, this one was quite large. On the inside, a young man clad in a slim waistcoat and tailored pants held a guest list at a podium. He grinned courteously. "Your name?" "My name is Keziah." My hand shifted to fix the gift bag as I introduced Keziah Reynolds. He paused after scanning the sheet. A column was traced by his finger. "You have been added to the Reynolds family block as a +1. I squinted. "What apologies?" He showed it to me by turning the paper over. An expertly crafted chart was before me. Everyone in the Reynolds family, then Lazaro, Delora, Orville, Thessaly, and finally Cousin Maxine and her 3 children. Then, one family member's guest, in a smaller font at the very bottom. I gritted my teeth and smiled anyhow. I suppose I'm the fortunate added bonus. He appeared uncertain, looking for a new tag. My handwriting is perfect for that. "It's fine," I remarked hastily. "Oh, is that so?" Over my heart, I affixed the generic visitor tag to my dress. The fabric was somewhat tugged. Nodding hellos as I went past the home, I was barely seen enough to keep in mind that I was out of orbit. The doors to the ballroom were ajar, lighted by sparkling crystal chandeliers that hung like planets in midair. The silk-covered tables sparkled like diamonds. The place cards were scanned by me. It was towards the rear of the bus that I had my seat, table 18. With my heels gently tapping against the marble, I made my way slowly toward it. In the shadow of a sturdy pillar, adjacent to the kitchen door, where the sound of clinking trays and the infrequent cry of hot plate greeted diners sat table 18. My tableware was just a tad wrong. A crooked set of cutlery and a napkin folded into a limp swan appeared as though they had given up on the evening by the time it was halfway done. As the kitchen door swung open, I paused to adjust it. Watching the incredibly delicate wing flutter in the breeze, I took a seat and let out a long breath. The head table was almost invisible from where I stood, yet I could make out every word spoken. There was more popping of champagne bottles, laughter, and toasts from every direction. People were hailing Lazaro, our beloved son. Hey! Someone yelled. A woman clad in high heels bent down to plant a kiss on his cheek. Standing by his side, Delora radiated the poise and charm of a political hostess. Throughout the several gatherings, she insisted that this be her son. He was promoted to the position of regional vice president unexpectedly. After a span of 5 years, what a remarkable phenomenon, I went unnoticed. On one occasion, my dad, Orville, did look over. With a slow nod, not a greeting, but an awareness of my existence, he returned to speaking with his business partner after catching my sight across the crowd. With a slow drink, I took up the glass of water and allowed the coolness ground me. The napkin was once again rubbed across my hand on delicate china, that melancholy swan hunched over and alone. Perhaps they omitted my correct listing. Perhaps the chart was jumbled up by accident. On the other hand, perhaps I was never supposed to be the center of attention. The server cleared the table next to me by bending over. Throughout the night, it stayed deserted. Which one was that, she asked. A grin spread over my face. No, it's completely yours. As a spotlight shone on the stage, the sound of silverware clinking on glasses filled the air, and the stage lights were gradually turned down. Before settling, a microphone made a low scream. The system was interrupted by a deep, recognizable voice. Someone very important to us has some words to say now. The honor is due Keziah Reynolds. I froze. Unfortunately, the speakers repeated my name in a way I had not anticipated. With some hesitation and confusion, I got to my feet as the ovation was fading. Nothing had been planned. I had no idea why they wanted me to step forward. My heart was pounding as I strode over to the little stage, and Delora smiled at me in a way I couldn't decipher. The surface was too smooth to be inviting. At the heart of the stage stood a microphone stand, flanked by an overly brilliant spotlight. With my eyes veiled, I scanned the room for any sign of background information. From his seat at the head of the table, Lazaro nodded to me as Thessaly's hand rested elegantly on his, smiling as if he knew the finale to the show. Orville sat with one arm draped behind Delora. While I waited for someone to pass me a screenplay, a card, or anything else, I made my way to the microphone. Under no circumstances, suddenly, the screen behind me came to life. The tape began to play a movie montage. Pictured first is Lazaro, all Little League, with a bat that dwarfs his arms. Next thing you know, he's exhibiting a cardboard volcano in the middle school science fair. He graduates from high school, has an internship while in college, and then shakes hands with the mayor. Next came the plans for his debut architectural undertaking. The story started. Sound of my mom's voice. Achieving greatness was in Lazaro's destiny from the start. Every room was illuminated by him. He was our rock and our pride. Next, Orville spoke up. You can't teach intelligence, and we knew he had it from the start. You're born with it. Nostrils clenched. Instead of smiling and watching the film aloud, I kept my hands crossed in front of me and watched in silence so they wouldn't accuse me of being overly sensitive. I loaned Lazaro $75,000 when he was just starting out, and they never once brought it up. On the weekends, when his program malfunctioned, I assisted him in rebuilding customer decks so the carpet installer wouldn't back out. I slept on the floor of his partially constructed showroom that night. This history they crafted for the masses has absolutely no mention of me whatsoever. A splash of golden cursive marked the end of the video, heralding a future legacy. Roll call, polite applause, and even some exuberant applause were heard. Returning my attention to the microphone, I gave a subtle nod. In her approach, Delora sprang up from her seat and applauded. She then cheerfully read out some words from her sister, who is always thoughtful. I squinted. That concludes it, performing a speech. They hadn't prepared me for this performance. Out of the blue. I felt self-conscious and looked down at my outfit. Sweat was beading off my palms. There was a lean from me toward the microphone. What a lovely evening. I started Lazaro. You have an innate ability to provide joy to anyone you're with. Yes, At that moment, she spoke up, as if we were all in on a joke. Delora cut me off while giggling. Tell them, my darling. Giving them the key to the condo tonight would be the most thoughtful present ever. Perpetually. The space froze. A normal level of quiet would never have fallen. It felt as if an entire room were suddenly evacuated. Somebody coughed in the rear. The shutter release notification was sent by the phone's camera. After swallowing, my throat felt parched. I studied her closely, attempting to discern whether she had gone completely insane or whether this was a test. Excuse me, I whispered the question to her, avoiding the microphone, smiling. She persisted. With you often on the go for business and Thessaly and Lazaro just tied the knot, it's hard to stay put in that beautiful 2-bedroom condo you own in Austin, senses perfectly, from his chair. Orville added with a loud voice, just pretend it's a formality. Kez. You can do without that much room. You're not even making use of the guest room, is all. No, it was not a recommendation. Without coming across as ungrateful, it was a strategy meant to ensure that no one could say no. Nobody knew what to say or do in response. Nerves jiggled. Eyes shifted. Lazaro peered at the food on his plate. Thessaly's jaw clenched. She appeared unfazed. My voice became unexpectedly sharp as I spoke into the microphone, expressing my disapproval of the situation. You could feel the energy in the room. A few gasps, some out of pity and some out of shame. With an improvised smile, Delora waved a hand. No need to act so theatrical, my dear. As a symbol of affection, it's only a gesture. A constriction in my chest was palpable. When Lazaro's business faced a slump, I felt compelled to defend myself by detailing every sacrifice, debt, and family expense that I had paid for. Though I refrained from doing so, I looked straight at my mom instead. Her expression had been contorted into an air of mystique. Her expressionless, analytical eyes betrayed her lack of affection. It was all prearranged, exactly at that second. The spectators twitched. That is courageous. Someone whispered, she won't say no in front of everyone, men by ici. Right, a woman close whispered to her buddy. I delicately placed the microphone on the table. It moaned when it hit. As I fluffed my skirt, my hand quivered a little. After then, a smile spread across my face. Come here quietly, contained. I perceive you grin. And I shall save every detail in my memory. As I left the stage, I had no idea that the dessert table held the worst part yet. As soon as I stepped down from the platform, I noticed Orville standing rigidly by the dessert table, his mouth clenched and his arms crossed. He paid no attention to the celebrants or the cake. All eyes were on me, and that was always a red flag. Standing slightly behind him, Delora held a champagne flute and murmured something quietly. Her expression betrayed no sign of anxiety. It was repulsive. She merely made us seem foolish, ignoring my presence. She whispered something to him, possibly even anticipating that I would. Slowing down wasn't out of fear, but rather a sense that I was about to be cornered. I looked for a secure face, all saints. Her gaze averted. Hello. Lazaro, he was denying my existence while drinking something nefarious. Under my feet, I felt the immaculate white marble floor, the kind of surface so smooth that it makes your reflection seem alien. Orville rose to his feet and seized the champagne bottle resting on the table by its neck. I thought he was going to grab a new one, but then he abruptly spun around and, silently, swung it to the side. My head was just above the base when it caught me, a fissure. White follows. It was more like a camera's flash that never went off than a complete blackout. I was taken aback, my eyes racing. Along the side of my face, I felt a creeping warmth and a pressing sensation. A gasp follows. "Oh my God," was whispered by someone. Various opinions. Was he simply... All hands on deck. Every single one of those hands refrained from expanding their reach. Like scarlet writing on snow, Blood hit the marble. Dolores spat out, "You ungrateful brat!" Without lowering her voice, "We welcomed you into our house and provided for your every need." I was completely overwhelmed. I started going before my thoughts could keep up, leaning ever so slightly. I put my hand on the side of my skull. Yes, the agony was excruciating, but the shame burned like fire. Only a handful of the invited visitors took a conservative approach. Nobody took the initiative. "Someone contact the police," said Jonah, my cousin on my dad's side, the one who always had that pungent smell of motor oil. Despite the crack in his voice, he made no attempt to approach me. I carefully straightened up, attempting to conceal the trembling in my knees. Red streaks were already visible on my pale blue dress. As I stood on the marble, it glowed and made me dizzy. "Where is she at?" "Near the fruit table," a woman muttered. "She's exaggerating, isn't she?" "No," another individual responded curtly. "The man struck her. I captured it on film." A scream eluded me. I chose not to weep. I remained completely silent. I strolled, despite the utter disbelief of the onlookers. Lazaro continued to gaze down at his plate as if it were the center of the universe. She didn't stand up. Even if Thessaly stroked his arm. The night was peaceful outdoors. Nobody caught on. With my fingers quivering, I summoned an Uber. The driver didn't arrive until blood had dried down my jawline. He appeared anxious. "My dear, are you okay?" "Hospital?" I added plainly. The fluorescent lights in the emergency room made the entire place feel chillier. Applying ink with the edge of my bandage, I completed my own form. The nurse was kind and asked questions in a voice that suggested she was accustomed to ladies arriving alone. "Will anyone be joining you for the night?" It was a no-go for me. "Nope, it's just me." She seemed to understand more than she was letting on by nodding. "This is nothing new." As she applied gauze to my head, I reclined on the rigid bed, clean and pristine. The ceiling tiles resembled toothpaste in color. And then it dawned on me, not the anguish, not the shame, but the understanding. I didn't show up for any of them after that. Everything hurt by the time I returned to Leah's that evening. I could feel the rapid unraveling of events as my scalp ached with every heartbeat. With a lukewarm mug of chamomile tea on the dresser and a fluffy towel by the bedside, she had left the light on in the guest room. It remained untouched. I simply dove under the covers, shoes and everything, and shut my eyes. Rather than sleep, I want to block off the sound of breaking glass and the scrutiny of nosy neighbors. The morning arrived far too quickly, accompanied by the sputtering of a neighbor's sprinkler system and the chirping of linen curtains. I briefly lost track of my whereabouts as I blinked at the strange ceiling. After that, I felt a sudden ache in my brain, and my memories flooded back. Quickly, I retrieved my phone. The screen was illuminated by dozens of notifications. Even Lazaro couldn't muster any relatives to even appear concerned. Several communications arrived from former colleagues who had viewed a video clip on the internet. It was indeed uploaded at that very moment, my body plummeting sideways as blood blossoms at my temple, a trembling recording, and a gasp from the audience. I hit the erase key multiple times while my hands continued to tremble. I looked for consistency and regularity. I took a long shower and cleaned my teeth very gently, scowling every time I turned my head. Afterwards, I retrieved my apartment key from my purse. It was only a mental check to make sure I was steady and in charge. But there was a strangeness. Complete with my phone, wallet, lip balm, receipts, and even the half-eaten protein bar from last week, everything was in its proper place, but not the spare key to the condo that I had a habit of keeping in my side pocket. I dropped the contents of the bag onto the bed one by one, under no circumstances, and then it dawned on me. Orville said a week ago that he had mistakenly picked up my suitcase after a family meal in Westlake. I assumed it belonged to your mom. He returned it with a sheepish grin and a shrug. I hadn't given it a second consideration. Right up to this moment, I jumped when I felt the vibration of a ringing phone. Code obfuscated, more driven by impulse than genuine interest. I responded. Hello there, Keziah. Hello, this is Jeanette from HomeQuest Realty. I wanted to clarify that we are still scheduled to meet at your unit today at 2 p.m. for the walkthrough. Is the lockbox more convenient for you? If so, we can meet at the entryway. I felt sick to my stomach. I failed to, with a raspy voice, I announced that I had not planned anything. Oh, Jeanette seemed perplexed as she fiddled with something on her computer. Your name is on the schedule. Even though Mr. Orville Sullivan's name was on the paperwork, the listing account was actually in your name. I was gasping for air. My condo was never listed. A pause ensued. Would you like to reschedule the screening? The call was ended by me, sitting on the edge of the bed with my elbows on my knees and my phone in one hand while desperately clutching the bed sheet as if it could prevent me from free-falling was my only option for a brief while. They weren't merely out to make me look bad. Their goal was to gradually remove me from existence. The blinking cursor on my laptop screen looked as if it were daring me to do something, so I opened it and stared at it. Later thereafter, I accessed an empty email. This is an urgent message to Marlo, Steinberg at lawfirmco.com. Excuse me, Marlo. At the networking breakfast last fall, we briefly met. Please keep me in mind. It seems like my folks are plotting to take over my house. Even though I haven't gathered any evidence just yet, a real estate agent called me regarding a walkthrough that I never actually booked. The key they have is not authorized by me. How about we have a conversation, Sullivan, Keziah? Afterwards, I snatched my coat and hit send. By midday, I had a locksmith and myself standing outside my East Austin condo, the sun glaring down on my neck. A coverall-clad man gestured toward the doorknob. Several people have come and gone. The scratches appear to be recent, as if the exact location of the key was not known to them. Are you able to unlock the doors? I inquired. Certainly, he responded, also interested in a deadbolt, yes. I did indeed nod. I leaned against the hallway wall and watched as he began working. My gaze concentrated on the little scratches close to the handle. Not an intruder. Bravery is not evident. Simple access. Casual, well-known entry, those that gave you the creeps. It was a restless night for me. Sitting on the couch in quiet, with the aroma of metal and lubricant still hanging in the air, I waited for the locksmith to depart, which was around 8 o'clock. I tossed and turned for hours after reheating leftover soup, barely touched it, and then served it again. I woke up to the gentle buzz of my phone on the counter next to my keys as soon as it was light outside. A fresh email sent by Dolores Sullivan, matter at hand. Keziah, I want to talk to you. Everyone here loves you. So far, this is sufficient. Feel free to drop by my place this afternoon. Ourself and no one else. We can resolve this. Dear Mother, I should not have stared at it for so long. Anger wasn't what surfaced. It was a less boisterous thing, even warmer, a small remnant of that fervent wish I hadn't quite annihilated just yet. The possibility that they wished to communicate was there, as close as blood relatives. I was into their driveway by 2:15. Everything about the front lawn was the same, to the last detail. There were solar lights strung along the flower beds and a porch swing that hadn't squeaked in years. However, there was an unsettling vibe to the atmosphere. Far too scripted. Even before I tapped, Delora had her arms extended as if she could sense my reluctance, and she opened the door. "Keziah, baby, she proclaimed as she drew me into an icy embrace. "We appreciate your presence." I entered the building. Staged furnishings adorn the living room. There's no other way to put it. The coffee table is adorned with fresh orchids. On the table with my beloved shortbread cookies were lemon tea. Pictures in frames that I hadn't looked at for a long time, as children. Lazaro and I spent time at the lake, that fuzzy photo from the high school debate championships. All the lights worked just right, soft, open and welcoming. Perched on the couch armrest, Lazaro sat with his hands folded and his lips pressed into a straight line. Looking up, He remained silent. Not even Thessaly was present. "Just us," Delora repeated, pointing to the cushy chair where we used to sit during Christmas gift opening. We aimed to rectify the situation. I sat down. A manila envelope was seen by Orville as he came bursting out of the corridor. He shot me an expressionless glance, on the verge of arrogance and tranquility. "We've been considering ways to maintain transparency," he said. "Please, let there be no further confusion. Thus, we put some words on paper." He presented the envelope as if it were a gesture of goodwill. I inquired, "What is it?" Even though I had an inkling, a simple tool for establishing limits within the family, he responded with ease. "In order to prevent any future harm, gingerly." I cracked it open. Thick paper lined the interior. Formal, legal, out in boldface font, the words "deed transfer agreement" stared back at me. All the rest was couched in benign language, clearing up assets, planned internally. Comprehending one another, anxiety gripped me. On the signature line, I turned the page. "The apartment is being asked me to sign over to you," with her hands folded in her lap. Delora grinned. "It's only paperwork, my darling." "Exactly that. Having all that room to yourself is unnecessary. You're completely ignoring it." Orville chimed in. "Put your faith in us, won't you?" All of a sudden, the space seemed cramped, denser air. The folder was gently closed, and I returned it to its place on the coffee table. Very close to the tea tray on the left, in a low but steady voice, I explained that you had set this up to look like a reconciliation. Those lovely blossoms. Yes, those cookies. A collection of vintage photographs. The way you beckoned me to come home. She cocked her head to one side. "Are we?" "Yes." I responded. "You're basically asking me to give up the part of me that you don't already have control over." Orville's jaw jerked. "No, that is not the case here." With a deliberate stride, I re-evaluated the space. We were not at peace. Theatrical performance. I focused on the entrance. "That's not going to happen," I declared. "This is not the time, in all possible futures. This is the thing. This is stealing with a touch of elegance." Finally, Lazaro spoke. "This is merely real estate, Keziah." Looking back, I saw him. Real estate is irrelevant. It all comes down to your opinion of my value. On my way out, nobody saw me. Before a single tear could fall, I hurried to my car, hopped in, and quickly closed the door. I refrained from removing it. I casually allowed it to fall while I called Marlowe's number. On the subsequent ring, he responded. "Are you Keziah?" I expressed my readiness to fully commit. Keep all documents organized. Neither sunlight nor the aroma of coffee greeted me the following morning. A heavy, full-bodied stillness greeted me when I awoke. A stillness that refuses to be broken. A pressing sensation is felt, sitting by the kitchen window. I steeped my cup of black tea for longer than normal. The condensation on the glass made it so that I couldn't make out the crisp contours of a world that had changed in the space of a single night. The time I arrived at Marlowe's workplace was 9:32 in the morning. It was chilly and quiet inside the building, despite the fact that downtown was already bustling. Upon my arrival, Marlowe nodded and had a folder at the ready. He mentioned that he had gone over everything last night. The good news is that they have left a mess. "You are still legally responsible for the residence they are residing in." I squinted. "Is that so?" As he moved his pen to the signature line, he turned to the second page. "Do you recall that you purchased it in 2010, save your home from foreclosure? It was never returned. Their survival has been dependent on guesswork and anecdotal evidence." I reclined in my chair, allowing the details to sink in like warm oil. I offered them a handrail, my voice barely above a whisper. They fashioned it into a shackle. Without saying a word, he gently nodded, giving me an option. That pen was mine. When I got home, I didn't experience victory so much as direction. Rage wasn't what motivated me. I had already emotionally exposed them to a sufficient degree. The procedure was surgical. Come here quietly, final. In a matter of hours, Marlowe had submitted the notice to leave. They were not informed. No stern warnings were issued. Parking lots are not places for yelling bouts. Nothing like a live audience applauding during a staged intervention with the whole family. No, this was not a television segment. This was the actual world. Real life is like a slap in the face. The eviction order was delivered 3 days later by the sheriff. It was happening behind the scenes. Our extended family group chat saw it as a plea for assistance. But Lazaro, ever the internet chronicler of life's milestones, recorded it on a blurry home security camera and shared it with us. Orville, dressed in a rumpled bathrobe and clutching a half-eaten slice of toast, opened the front door and glanced at the uniformed man as if he had suddenly awakened in someone else's life, according to the tape. Behind him, Delora froze mid-sip from a porcelain mug, her mouth slightly agape. Although the officer's voice was too muted for the microphone to pick up, the emotion was clear regardless. He then presented them with a sealed envelope. She tensed up physically. Snatching up the paper, Orville quickly skimmed it before slamming it against the wall. I skipped ahead to the part where she yelled at the cop, but the video shut off before I could hear a word. I watched it twice before deleting the app. That evening, I sat in my condo, honey in hand, lights off, phone facing down, screen blank, no music, no Netflix, just peace and silence. The outside world persisted in its motion. A dog howled out in the distance, cars zoomed by, and jazz music swelled from a nearby balcony. Stillness pervaded the interior. I chose not to weep. I was not pacing. The air wasn't toasty. I did nothing more than sit and breathe. Standing over someone isn't always the way justice is served. At times, it appears as though you've decided to never stand beside them again. I nearly disregarded the once ticking sound from my phone. I flipped it over afterwards, a single line conveying a message from Thessaly. "You have no idea how bad they've been." From the dim screen. Thessaly's message glared back at me, illuminated like a confession in the light. The linked image was touched by me. An old photo album with a leather cover that is beginning to fray. Page after page. She had captured images of it open on her lap, but I was conspicuously absent from them. There won't be any embarrassing Christmas photos featuring those hideous sweaters that Mom insisted on. And there won't be any milestone birthdays or graduations either. It felt as though someone had surgically erased my existence from history. Shortly after, she sent a text message. "Even in their memories, they have been deleting you for a long time." I squinted. Those 2 times, after that, they spoke softly to themselves. Therefore, it wasn't all in my head. Despite its subtlety, that affirmation hit like a ton of bricks. My response was delayed. I did nothing except stare at the picture, allowing the harsh reality to penetrate the malleable substance of my memory. You didn't merely ignore me. The story of my own family systematically left me out, as if on purpose. Thank you for confirming my deepest, most hidden feelings. I finally put them into words. I awoke the following morning to an unexplained quiet, like the calm before a storm. Actually, it's inside. I had no idea why I went on social networking. Perhaps I could have felt the next hit coming a mile away. Earlier, Delora had shared a video. The voice in it was completely unfamiliar to me at first, yet I owned it. An excerpt from my speech given at Lazaro's celebration. Just a portion of the speech. It was precisely at that point when my voice broke. No one agreed with what I said. It was cut with shots of Lazaro laughing and holding balloons, of me standing unnaturally tall and ungainly. Who wrote that? We cherished her upbringing. Tragedy struck us by surprise. Underneath it, hashtags poured out like wine. Things related to family and heartache. A stranger's daughter. The comments were not clicked by me. Nevertheless, The preview adequately conveyed the message. The attitude of being rude. We require the complete account. It seems like some youngsters can never be pleased. No longer were they only rewriting history. A brand new work of fiction was taking shape. I am portrayed as the antagonist. My grip was firm. That took me by surprise. Again, I was afraid I would be trembling. My Dropbox account was instead accessed. Everything has been uploaded. I sent them a wire transfer with a due date. The first deed for the condo, letters discussing the loan that I extended to Lazaro, not to mention Mom's saved voicemail, requesting permission to pay the mortgage on a single occasion. I will not remark. Keep it simple. Not a rallying cry. If you're interested in seeing it, it's just a folder called Truth. The laptop was then turned off. I was unconcerned about it going viral, or not. There was no purpose behind that. I had no need to remain silent any longer. That was the purpose. The tea was brewed by me. Lie down in the kitchen while the blinds are partially drawn. As I held the mug in my palm, I allowed the sun to warm the back of my hand, and it had been days since I'd felt the need to brace myself for the next attack. I spent the afternoon sorting through a long-ago storage bin. My personal photo album was concealed behind a worn-out t-shirt from my college days. I had created one when I was a senior in high school, ages before I realized they would eventually remove me. With great care, I paged through it. It was me, incorrect bite. Concert attire prohibitive. Kazia's story is not just about betrayal, it's about what happens when silence becomes survival. For older adults who may have experienced a lifetime of complex family dynamics, this narrative is a stark reminder that being related does not mean being respected. Her parents didn't just attempt to take her home, they tried to erase her identity, her sacrifices, and her history. But instead of exploding in rage, Kazia responded with something far more powerful clarity. She gathered truth, protected her assets, and stepped away with dignity intact. For those over 65, this story speaks to the hard-earned wisdom of boundaries, the understanding that peace sometimes requires walking away from people you once called home. It reminds us that justice is not always loud or public. Sometimes it's a quiet legal signature, a locked door, a deleted photo, or a folder simply called Truth. And perhaps most importantly, Kazia's story tells us that you are never too old or too late to reclaim your narrative. In a world that may try to rewrite you out, you still get to write the final chapter.